Okay, station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event? Houston, are you ready for the event?
I am ready for the event.
Houston, Houston ACR, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Houston ACR. How do you hear me?
Houston, we have you loud and clear. How do you read me?
We have you loud and clear.
Awesome, because I am ready to do some reading. Hello everyone, to all the kids out there, whether it's at school or home or wherever you are. My name is Shannon Walker, and I'm an astronaut living aboard the International Space Station. Right now, I'm in what we call the Japanese Experiment Module. Our friends in Japan created this module so we could do science on board, and we've got all kinds of instruments around us that help us do research on the space station. In fact, behind me right here is an airlock. We can put things inside the airlock and then take them outside and do research outside as well as inside the space station. It's all very exciting. But today, I want to read a story. What I want to read is a story called Willow the Water Bear. I don't know what a water bear is, but hopefully we'll find out. Let's begin. Read along with me. All right. Willow, the water bear, was a curious little thing, but she wanted to do more than dance and sing. And here's a picture, I think, where Willow is supposed to live. I don't see Willow the water bear in here, but we're in a forest and we've got a snake in a tree and some flowers, so a really place to live, I think. A really place to live? I wish I were a superhero, Willow exclaimed. I'd save people and everyone would know my name. You're perfectly fine, Mr. Tardy declared. But I want to be strong, Willow shared. What if I told you, Mrs. Gray declared aloud, that you're already a superhero? Be proud. So what do we have here? I think this is Willow right there, and that's probably Mr. Tardy and Mrs. Gray, and this is where they live, in the forest. And they have a little caterpillar as a friend, it looks like. So let's see what happens next. And you can see Willow wants to be a superhero because she's got on a mask and a cape. And I think, you know, superheroes like to wear masks and capes. I'm nothing special, Willow said with a sigh. Not special at all. I can't even fly. Mr. Tardy stood up and held out 8 hands. Ms. Gray did as well, as if it were planned. 8 hands? I only have 2 hands. They've got 8 hands. Come with us, Willow, they both said politely. We'll show you a superhero. Hold on tightly. So there they are talking, and here I think they're getting ready to go on an adventure, but they're tiny, so they're actually using a leaf to travel around in the wind. Very exciting. So away they went through the forest of trees to the depths of the ocean where the pressure squeezed. Ooh, to the bottom of the ocean. Amazing, shouted Willow, but where's the superhero? He's moved, said a sea clam. Try looking near absolute zero. Near absolute zero, a confused Willow replied. That's right, said the sea clam. Nice meeting you. Goodbye. So here they all are on the bottom of the ocean, and this is a giant sea clam, and you can see Willow right there talking to the sea clam, and a big fish there, and then Mr. Tardy and Ms. Grade watching. But there's no superhero here, so they're going to have to go somewhere else to find the superhero. Their adventure continued to the chilly Antarctic Ocean, where they met Mr. Krill, who approached them with caution. What brings you out here? Mr. Krill whispered quietly. We're looking for a superhero, Willow stated quite mightily. I'm afraid he's not here. In fact, you just missed him. He's left planet Earth, but he's still in the solar system. So there they all are down in Antarctica. We've got penguins in Antarctica. We've got Willow and her friends talking to Mr. Krill. Mr. Krill is peeking out of the water there. Mr. Krill is a kind of shrimp. Left planet Earth, Willow shouted with fear. No worries, Miss Grade said. Follow us, my dear. Scared but excited, Willow followed the two. What is that? Willow asked. Oh, wait, that's the moon. They arrived on the moon in the vacuum of space. Surely this must be where a hero awaits. Joe, Laz, what are you two doing here? Have you seen the superhero? Willow asked, full of cheer. And there they are out in space going off to see the moon. I don't think they're using the rocket ship, but they're flying off to the moon. Very exciting. We're traveling with our family for a week of vacation. No superheroes here, just rest and relaxation. I want to go home, Willow the water bear cried. There's no such thing as superheroes. Admit it, you lied. We did not lie, Mr. Tardy said sharply. That's true, Mrs. Grade said. You accuse us falsely. And so there they are on the moon. You can see the sun in the background and the moon. And then Willow's friend, Joe and Laz, are on the moon having a little vacation. That's kind of neat. Think about it, Willow, she said with a grin. What if the hero all along was within? You've traveled the world and the depths of the ocean to the chill of the Antarctic where most life lacks motion. So it gave Willow something to think about. There's Willow and all the places she's been on this little adventure. They went down and saw the sea clam. They went into outer space, or they went down to Antarctica where it was really cold, and they went into outer space and are on the moon right now. Just look where you stand in the vacuum of space. No one other creature could survive in this place. Have you figured it out? Is it all become clearer? Superheroes are real. Just look in the mirror. That's absolutely true. All you have to do is look in the mirror. Everybody is some kind of superhero. We all have our special talents and things that we can do that maybe nobody else can do. And Willow is now very excited because she realizes that she is a superhero after all. That's just wonderful. So, now that Willow knows that she's a superhero, we didn't really find out much about water bears. So let's see what the book can tell us about what a water bear is. So I've got some facts about water bears. So water bears are actually also called tardigrades. I know that's a big word. Water bear is kind of a nickname for tardigrade. So tardigrades are water bears, can be found almost everywhere and live on every continent, including Antarctica. I don't know if I've ever seen a water bear, but I think they're pretty small. They were first discovered by Johann August Ephraim Goethe in 1773 and were given their names by Lazzaro Spallanzani, ooh, that's a tough name, in 1776. So water bears were discovered almost 250 years ago. That is a long time ago. Tardigrades, or water bears, are incredibly unique because they can survive stresses that are beyond extreme, such as drying out. So they like to live in water maybe, but they can dry out. They can survive freezing. They can survive high temperatures and intense radiation. They can even survive the vacuum of space, which is amazing because I can't do that. Even as an astronaut, I cannot survive the vacuum of space. They make up an entire group of tiny animals unto themselves, and they are most closely related to arthropods. Now, arthropods are things that include insects and crustaceans and nematodes. Nematodes is a different thing. Nematodes are actually small, microscopic, round worms. So tardigrades, or water bears, are related. Their cousins are insects and worms. That's pretty interesting. Researchers believe that the common ancestor of tardigrades and their relatives were made up of additional parts. They had more parts in their body, kind of like worms have different segments. They think that the tardigrades had more segments. And that over time, tardigrades lost many of these middle segments. And so basically right now, tardigrades, the water bears, are only heads and legs. That's kind of funny sounding to me. Just heads and legs, and maybe some hands, because they said they had 8 hands. Many people think that there's only one kind of tardigrade, but scientists have actually discovered over 1,200 different species, and they're still counting. That is a lot of water bears. A lot of water bears everywhere. All water bears have a tough exoskeleton surrounding them. Exoskeleton. So you know how we have a skeleton on the inside, our bones are on the inside? With water bears, it's apparently on the outside. That's very unusual. Some species of water bears have ornate spikes and plates and horns decorating their outsides. Researchers aren't sure what these spikes and horns are for, but they think they may help the water bears to understand and feel things that are going around in their environment. Pretty cool. Researchers also speculate that when tardigrades dry out, they can be picked up by the wind and be carried around the world. This might help explain why we find water bears on every continent. So they dry out, they get blown off by the wind, and they just go everywhere. When hydrated or put back into water, tardigrades rarely live for more than a few months, so they don't live very long. However, when they are dried or frozen, they can survive for years, some cases decades. So if you had a tardigrade, you could dry it out and keep it for a really, really long time, and later on, you can put it back in some water, and it would still be alive. Amazing. So, because they're so tiny, if you have a microscope, you can probably find a tardigrade living around you. Maybe in your schoolyard, in your playground, in a park, or even in your backyard if you have one. So, maybe someday you can go see tardigrades for yourself. Pretty cool. That's great. So that is my story, and I really hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you were able to read along with me. And what I'd like to do right now is answer some questions for some folks. And I have some questions right here. Let's see. The first question I have is from Maddie, who is age 4. And Maddie wants to know what she can do to become an astronaut someday. Well, Maddie, the most important thing you can do is study hard in school. As astronauts, we all have studied a lot of math and a lot of science, because that is the main thing we do in space. So work hard in school, and that will help you become an astronaut someday. Lucas and Diego have the questions. They're age 6. They want to know what kind of plants we have on the International Space Station. Great question. We actually have several different plants growing on the space station right now. We're growing some lettuce because it's always good to eat your vegetables, and we're growing some other plants too that we can use in salads. So we haven't grown them very long. They're just a few weeks old, but I'm hoping in another couple weeks we'll be able to eat some of these plants and have a delicious meal. Landon, who's 7, wants to know, where do you get your food if you run out? Excellent question, because we do not want to run out of food. I do not like going hungry. But what we do is every few months we have a supply ship come up to the space station and bring us more food. So it always has more food than we need. And so we've got a lot of spare food on board, like back in the pantry. We can always find something to eat. And then every few months we'll get more food. So hopefully we never run out. Sophie, who's 8, wants to know what the sunset looks like from space. Oh, Sophie, the sunset is so beautiful from space. If you could only see the colors. It's kind of like the sunset on Earth, but it goes really, really quickly because we're going around the Earth so fast, and you can kind of see all the colors at once. We're looking down at the atmosphere, and so our atmosphere is really small, and so the sunset, instead of seeing a wide open sky like you might see on Earth, you can see the sky, and it's only about that big, but you can see all the colors. It's absolutely beautiful to see the sunset in space. Claire, age 6, has these questions. We keep track of the days with the sun and the moon. If you're in outer space, how do you know what day it is, and how do you pick what time there is? What time it is there? Fantastic question, because we are going around the Earth a lot faster than the Earth rotates. So, what that means is that we actually have to pick a time zone, and we've picked a time that is just like the time for the people in Europe. So we just said, all right, today at this time it is midnight, and we do our day from there. And then how do we know what day it is? Well, we've got calendars and watches, so we know what day it is, and we just operate on a slightly different time than the United States operates on. Grace, age 12, wants to know what's it like to float in the space station versus outside the space station. Well, the biggest difference between floating in the space station, and I am floating in the space station, by the way, so I can just float and stay here. The biggest difference between inside and outside is that I have an atmosphere inside and we don't have an atmosphere outside. It's the vacuum of space. So when we're outside the space station, we actually have to wear a spacesuit. And we wear that spacesuit to keep us alive. It gives us oxygen to breathe, and it keeps us cool so we can survive when we're outside the space station. Ada Joe wants to know what made me want to be an astronaut and explore space. Well, I tell you, what made me want to be an astronaut is when I was quite young, a little bit younger than Ada Joe was. Ada Joe is 6. We sent astronauts to the moon. And my parents were telling me about it, and we went out into the backyard and we saw the moon, and they said that we have people on the moon, and I thought that was just the most fantastic idea ever. And ever since I was quite young, I wanted to be an astronaut. And now I am. It's great. Angie, age 12, and Jackson, age 4, want to know if anyone has ever gotten sick in space. And how does it compare when you're sick on Earth? And what do you do to get better? Fantastic question. Actually, we don't have anybody that's ever gotten sick in space. And the reason is because before we go into space, before we get on our rocket, we spend a lot of time in quarantine. Now, I know right now a lot of the world has been staying home to try and not get sick, and that's exactly what we do. We go live in a special place before we launch on our rocket into space, and we stay there away from everybody else so that we keep all the germs away from us, and we are healthy. So when we launch into space, we don't have a cold, we don't have a flu, we don't have anything else, and we don't have to worry about getting sick because nobody up here has anything because we've all been in quarantine. Ellie, age 9, wants to know about our muscles in space and if our muscles shrink when we're in space, which is a good question because we're not walking around in gravity all the time, and so we don't use our muscles the same way, and it's it can be very easy to lose strength and not be as strong when we get back from being in space. But what we do is exercise every single day. Very important. We have 3 machines that we can use to exercise on. We have an exercise bike. We have a treadmill, which you may think, how do you run on a treadmill? We use a treadmill for running. We actually have to have a harness to hold us down to the treadmill so we don't float off. And we have this magical machine that's kind of like lifting weights. We push against resistance, and that's what really works our muscles to keep us strong when we're in space. And so we do that every day when we're up here to stay healthy. And if you could exercise every day at home, that would be fantastic because that would be great for your muscles too, and you would stay healthy on Earth. Lenny, age 15, wants to know if it's scary to look out in the lonely abyss of space when we're up here. Abyss, that's a big word. So Lenny, no, it's not scary to look out in space. It's actually quite interesting to look out in space. So there's 2 things we can look at. During the day, it's very easy to look down at the Earth and look at our planet, and we can see all the continents, we can see all the rivers and cities, and so that's very interesting. But when it's nighttime up here, we can look out in the universe and see all the stars, and we see so many stars. It's just unbelievable. We can see the Milky Way and just so many things to see out there. And so I don't feel lonely. I've got my crewmates up here. I know my friends and family on Earth, and I don't feel like I'm too far away from anybody. So I just find it interesting to look out into space as opposed to lonely. Speaking of stars, Arthur, age 3, wants to know if we have ever seen a full constellation from the space station. Well, we have, because we can see so many stars up here. I probably have seen maybe all the constellations, although I'm not very good at picking out the constellations, but we can certainly see them from up here. Louis Barton, age 9, says that he once read in a book that there is a beaver dam that is big enough to see from space. And he wants to know if we can see it from the International Space Station. You know what? I had no idea that there was a beaver dam big enough to see from space. Apparently, it's in the Wood Buffalo National Park in northern Alberta, Canada. And it's supposed to be twice the size of the Hoover Dam. Well, the Hoover Dam is huge, and I can see that from space. So if this beaver dam is twice the size of Hoover Dam, I bet I can see it. And now I'm going to have to go spend some time looking for that, because I would love to see a beaver dam that is that big. That's fascinating. Robin, age 5, wants to know, if we squeeze juice out in space, does it come out as a big bubble or does it just fall to the ground? You know, Robin, you're pretty smart, because it doesn't fall to the ground. It just floats in space, just like we're floating. So if I squeezed a blob of juice or some water, and I'm sorry I don't have any with me, it just makes a ball and it just floats right there. So if I wanted to, I could get a straw and stick it into the ball of juice and just drink juice from the ball floating in space. It's kind of fun to play with your food up here. Raymond, who is 8.5, wants to know if I could try any sport in space for fun, what would we try? Great question. On the ground, I like to play soccer. So I would probably play soccer up here, but what would be really cool is we could play soccer in all different directions. And so we might be on the wall this way, and then I could kick a ball off of that way, and then maybe one of our crewmates would be upside down, and we could kick a ball from a different direction. So three-dimensional soccer, I think, would be a lot of fun to play in space. All right, what other questions? Michael, age 9, wants to know what the biggest difference between a car motor and a spaceship motor. Great question. Some ways are the same, because both car motors and spaceship motors take some fuel, they burn the fuel, and it causes a reaction. In a car, the car motor is actually hooked up to the wheels. And so when the car motor goes, the wheels turn, and it's the wheels on the ground using friction that make the car go. In space, of course, spaceships don't have any wheels. We don't need wheels because we're not going on a road. So what happens with the spaceship motor, instead of being attached to wheels, the gas that is burning in the motor actually goes out the back end of the spaceship motor. And so as the gas goes that way, the spaceship goes this way. And that's how spaceships fly. It's pretty fascinating. But in some ways, car motors, spaceship motors are the same, but how they interact with their environment is different. Olivia, age 5, wants to know, how can an astronaut stay put in the same place while floating? You know what? It's kind of hard. I actually have my feet tucked under a rail here so I can stay in the same place, because if I didn't, I'll probably just start floating off somewhere, and then, like you see, I'll have to hang on to something, hang on with my hands or hang on with my feet to stay in the same place. Floating can be fun, but sometimes when you have to get work done, it can be kind of hard to stay in the same place. Ooh, like now. All right. Let's see. Merida, age 6, wants to know, why do you have to go into space? Well, good question. Astronauts go into space because We want to explore the universe, and we want to understand how the universe works. We want to understand science better. We want to understand how things work on Earth, and we want to develop things that might make life better on Earth. There's all kinds of things that have been developed in space that make life better on Earth. And so, as scientists and researchers, we want to do the research and science in space to help everybody and to understand the universe. All right, let's see. I think that was the last question we have. And so I thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it. And maybe next time I'll read another book and answer some more questions. See ya.
Station, this is Houston ACR. Thank you. That concludes our event.
And station, we will go back to operational comm at this point.
Thanks.